It is time. It's actually past time to talk about summer knitting. I personally am still working on finishing a few of my spring projects, so you will see some vlogs coming out soon, but it's so much fun to plan. I love these seasonal planning videos. Even if I don't necessarily get to every single project, I get a lot of inspiration from watching other people's plans, as well as just looking at my own stash and patterns that I want to knit and new yarn that I want to try, and just putting together a little collection for the season. So that's what this is. I think in my spring plans, I had very concrete ideas and I ended up casting on almost everything, and I'm getting through those projects. I'm either finished with them or I'm very close to being done. But for the summer, I honestly don't really have anything nailed down. I have a lot of pattern ideas and I have a couple things that I know I want to do, but this is really mostly going to be like kind of all of my ideas as a little brain dump. And I hope that that can be some inspiration. So let's get into it. I'm going to start with my knitting plans, but this is going to be all of my crafting for the summer. And the first project that I want to make is some sort of like lacy tank or lacy top. I've narrowed it down to 3 patterns so far, but I really can't decide which one I'm actually going to cast on. But the kind of driving factor for this is this yarn that I picked up recently when I was in Salt Lake City. This is Ritual Dye's Undine in the colorway Jewelweed, which is a gorgeous, like kind of a pinky red, or maybe more of an orangey red. I think on camera it might come across as a pure red, but it is a little bit on the orangey side. I think this has to be one of my favorite colors from Ritual Dyes. And this is a 60% cotton, 40% linen yarn. So it is fairly soft, but you can definitely feel the linen. I think the stitch definition with this yarn is going to be awesome. And so a lacy top, or a top with some lacy elements, seems like the right project for this yarn. And I have, as I mentioned, 3 patterns that I'm choosing between. So there's the Winnie top by Lily Kate France. This one has kind of been on my radar for a couple of summers as a potential project, and I just think it's really nice. It would be great for going into the office, so that is something to consider. I have not historically been like a fan of scallops, but there's something about the fact that this is like lace scallops that I really like. I have also only ever knit one of Lily Kate France's patterns, and I've always wanted to knit another one. I think they're really well written and I really like her style. So that is one I'm considering. The other one is the Ophelia blouse by Starcrossed Knits. I love the trend of like the open buttons or ties, and I have not made anything like that yet. Similar thing going on here where just the trim is lace, and I just think this is a really pretty blouse that I would have a lot of fun wearing out. Wouldn't wear it to the office, but I can picture a couple different ways that I would style this. So this one for sure is at the top as well. One thing I have seen is that people have a lot of gauge issues with this pattern, and I have not knit a pattern from this designer before, so that would kind of be a whole adventure, which I don't know, kind of sounds fun. And then the last one I'm thinking about is a very recently released pattern. It's the Isabel top by the Knit Pearl Girl. I've heard great things about her patterns, but I haven't made any, and I really, really like the lace of this top, and it also has a few different options. So you could just knit it as a tank, or you could knit it with buttons all the way down or ties and kind of wear it open. I honestly would be pretty happy with, I think, any of these patterns, so I just need to like make a decision. If you've knit any of these patterns and you have thoughts, I would love to know whether they are positive or not so great, just to kind of help me make this decision. But I think no matter what, this yarn is really going to kind of be the star of the top, and I'm very excited to work with it. I have not used it before, but I do love a good linen cotton blend. Now I'm currently finishing a summer top, and I think typically in the summer, like 1 to 2 tops is about where I max out. So I don't really anticipate that I will be hand knitting any more summer tops. However, I do have a knitting machine that is fairly new. I am figuring it out and knitting some projects. I've knit one project so far. I have another one kind of in the wings and a third one planned. And I want to use this yarn that I've had in stash. This is Lang Yarns Linello, and it is a cotton linen viscose blend. It's a very textured yarn, so it's thick and thin, and I think that can look really cool in stockinette. I have 3 skeins, which is probably a little bit more than I need because I want to knit a like boat neck style tank top on my knitting machine. Since it's on the machine, I think this is something that I could get done before the end of the summer, and I really love this yarn. It is color changing. This colorway is in roses, and I am just really loving the reds and the pinks this summer, I guess. So I don't have a pattern for this yet. I might kind of look around. I did some very light research into knitting machine patterns, and I'm sure there's something like this out there. So I'll keep looking into that, but I'm also kind of thinking about just improvising something. It is a very simple top, and I mean, it's a boat neck, so there's not a ton of shaping, there's not a whole lot to figure out, so like I don't really feel like I need a pattern, but I do always appreciate having some guidance because if I'm going off kind of on my own, then that's just going to involve some trial and error and take more time, but it also kind of sounds fun. So I'm probably going to end up doing that. I have looked at a couple of hand knitting patterns that I want to try to emulate, and I am pulling inspiration from the Bea or the Bee top by Petite Knit. It's just a very simple boat neck tank. I don't think there's really like anything that distinguishes it from other tanks, but you know, it's Petite Knit. It's just pretty simple. And the other one is the Brie boat neck by Midsummer Knits. This one has a little bit of rib detailing on the side, and then it also has a split hem, which I think is really cute. So I probably won't do the ribbing, and I might experiment with keeping like a rolled edge, like the one in the Petite Knit pattern. But those are sort of the patterns that I'm looking to for inspiration. I have knit one other top out of this yarn before, my Pentapillar pullover, and I liked it enough to get a different colorway of it. So I'm really hoping that this one turns out. I just love the colors in these skeins, and I for sure will be sharing more about what I end up deciding to do. In my spring plans, I talked about spinning for the jaunty shawl, and I did finish that spin, and now I'm ready to cast it on. So for my summer plans, I just want to cast it on. I don't really plan to like finish this. It is a pretty big shawl, and I did spin 10 ounces. I ended up with a mega skein. It really is like close to the size of my head. So this is a lot of yarn. It's going to produce a very big shawl if that's what I want. I probably won't end up using all of this yarn. I'm not sure exactly how big I want the jaunty. I have knit it before, so this is going to be my second one. And my first one was like a really good size, but a little bit on the smaller side. So maybe it would be nice to have just like one giant jaunty shawl to wrap up in this winter. I'm not sure yet, but this is what I spun. I spun doing a combo drafting or a parallel drafting method, which was something that I had tried before, but not in a full project or in more than just a single braid. So it was really interesting to combine 2 different braids using that method to get much more of a heathered yarn than like a stripy yarn. I think the results were quite interesting. I did also throw in 2 ounces of another braid, so I actually technically combined 3 different braids that were fairly similar in color. You can go watch that vlog of me spinning it if you want to know a little bit more, but this is a 3-ply, and I think it ended up being about a worsted weight. So I want to cast this on. I'm very excited to work with it. I love knitting with my hand spun, so this is going to be a fun project, but definitely not something that I plan to like finish anytime soon. I think this one is just a nice project to have on the needles needles, it's pretty mindless and I can just kind of pick it up and work on it as I have time or as I want to. It's a really good project to have in the evening when I'm watching TV and I'm pretty tired and I don't want to think too hard about my project. The Jaunty is a great one for that. My next project is one that I would like to finish. I'm very close to being done with it. This is the Manhattan Hat Light by Tori Yu. I started this back in February and kind of worked on it for a solid chunk there, and then I just set it down. And so this is just something I would like to get off the needles and have it ready to wear it in the fall. I'm knitting this out of Spincycle. This is dyed in the wool in the colorway Dead Reckoning, and it's just a very pretty, like, kind of pastel purple and like kind of a light teal color. And I was just kind of curious what this would look like as a beanie. So that's what I decided to make. I have wanted to make a Manhattan hat for a while. I think I'm actually going to triple cuff this because I have plenty of yarn. I have 2 skeins of this, and there are a few different options in this pattern. And one of those options is a triple folded cuff like that. So this is actually more realistic about where I'm at and how much knitting I actually have left here. So this is not an insignificant amount of knitting, but this is one of those projects that is very easy to take with me. So I do often just like throw it in the car. In fact, I did take this to the movie theater a couple of times. I think I was knitting on this when I went to see Project Hail Mary, and there are a couple of mistakes in here. I remember one was pretty bad, so I did fix that, or at least I caught it soon enough to fix it. And then I'm looking at another one here where I got a little bit off on the ribbing. So there are some like purl stitches where there should be knit stitches. Whatever. I think it's fine. It's kind of a nice memory actually of like what I was doing while I was knitting this when I see that mistake. So I'm just gonna leave it. Since this is 1x1 ribbing, I typically knit my 1x1 in combination knitting to tighten up my purls a little bit and help my knit stitches look a little bit neater. And so when I cast this hat on, I did start doing that. And then I realized it's just not as enjoyable for me as knitting knits and purls like the regular way. And so I kind of made the executive decision early on to abandon that and just knit this as 1x1, no combination knitting. So I'm just gonna flip it inside out and wear it like that, and I think my knit stitches are gonna look pretty good that way. It's just much more of an enjoyable knitting process for me, especially because this is a lot of 1x1 knitting, and as you saw, I have a lot to go. Okay, so those are my knitting plans, but I do have a project to carry over from my spring plans, which is a crochet sweater. And I am planning to crochet the Rockmore cardigan by Anna D. This is from Pom Pom Quarterly, and this is the issue 39. I think it's from, yeah, it's winter 2021. So I think you can buy this pattern on its own as well, but I happen to own this magazine, and this is just a really cool textured cardigan. I know a lot of people like this one, and I got several comments when I mentioned this in my spring plans from people who were excited that I was going to make this because they were thinking of making it as well. So I had some yarn ideas that I was really contemplating, and I sat on those for like a month or two and ended up switching it up, deciding not to go with those yarns that I was initially thinking about. And I found a new yarn that I think is going to be really good for this project. I decided to go with this Ampersand Fibers Jenson DK in this gorgeous like rusty orange color. It is the Vermilion 2 colorway. I think there's like 3 different shades of this color. And I got this on sale, 30% off, which is like a really good sale, which is partially what motivated me to buy this. And I figured I would swatch with it, and if it wasn't gonna work out for the crochet cardigan, I would just make something else from it. So I like wanted the yarn no matter what. But I do think this actually is going to be a good yarn. This is a DK weight yarn, and the pattern calls for a worsted weight. It calls for Derurum Natura Gilead, which is not a yarn that I have tried before, but I was looking at both of these yarns and comparing them, and they're actually very similar in weight. So the Jenson DK has 280 yards per 100 grams, and then the Gilead has 270 yards per 100 grams. So they are like practically the same. I did have to go up, I think maybe 1 or 2 hook sizes when I crocheted my swatch, but I think that just has more to do with my personal gauge. And so I probably would be getting a similar gauge if I had gone with a worsted weight or with the yarn the pattern called for. So I'm kind of glad that I went with this yarn in the end. And that's just something about yarn weights, is the label is not always exactly what you think. So I try to remember to always look at like how many yards I'm getting per the weight for each skein, because that is a more accurate way to kind of assess yarns when you're picking yarn for a project. But my swatch came out really nice. So as I mentioned, I did go up a couple of crochet hooks, but isn't the stitch pattern so cool? I actually think you're looking at the wrong side. I think this is the right side. It's a little bit hard to tell. Hopefully I'll kind of get that down as I work on this, but I love the stitch pattern. I love the ribbing. This is just done by crocheting in the back loop. Actually, you crochet in the back loop for the texture pattern as well. So kind of this whole cardigan is crocheted in the back loop, but this was a lot of fun to crochet. It makes me really excited to make this project. There's definitely a bit of a learning curve for me. I think this was like my 3rd swatch to like 1, understand the pattern fully, and then 2, to figure out my gauge. And I think that this is like pretty much on gauge. It's a little bit harder for me to measure crochet stitches, especially since some of these rows are slip stitches, so they're very small, but I think I was able to measure accurately. So I'm very excited for this project. I did order a little bit extra yarn just in case, because this yarn is no longer being offered in this exact base. That is why I was able to get this on sale. So I ordered an extra skein, just hoping that I'm gonna have like more than enough for this project. The other thing about this pattern is that it's crocheted side to side, so I can't really make any decisions about the length as I go, like based on my yardage. But like I said, I ordered more than what the pattern called for. So I think I did what I could to try to make sure that I have enough. Okay, so for Tour de Fleece, which has already started by the time you're seeing this. Last year, as you might know, I spun for a sweater, and that was a really fun, like big project to work on. And I really thought about doing it again this year, but I don't think the timing is going to work out great for me. Summer is just a very busy time. Our June, like every single weekend, we were either traveling or we were hosting. And so I didn't do like practically any crafting. And then July and August, like we're kind of in a similar situation where every weekend and a lot of our weeknights are just booked out. And I just don't have as much crafting time. I don't think I'm going to be able to fit in like a big spin this year, but I would like to do that like probably in the fall or maybe in the winter. So I certainly have plans for that, just I don't think the timing is good right now for me. The main thing that I want to focus on during Tour de Fleece is actually more of the prep, because I have a couple fleeces that have just been waiting for me to process them. I have a Rommeldale CVM and a Shetland fleece that I would like to scour, pick, and card. And so that's gonna be kind of the main thing that I am focused on this Tour de Fleece, and less so the spinning. However, I still would like to spin a little bit. So one of the braids that I'm thinking about spinning is this one from La Bien-Aimée. This is their Confetti base, which is 50% merino, 30% Shetland, and then the other 20% are all of these like recycled fibers that you can see carded in throughout. This is in the colorway Aimée's Peach Sweater, and it's just a very beautiful, subtle, like pinky peach color. I got this in Seattle from La Mercerie when I was there this past fall. And it's sort of just kind of been sitting there waiting for me to spin it. I don't really have any knitting plans with it, but I would just like to spin this and enjoy that process. I'll probably end up doing a 2-ply. And then I don't really have any other like single braids that I would like to spin. To be honest, I'm pretty good about like spinning my fiber as I buy it. I like to buy for projects. I do definitely have a stash, but actually a lot of those braids are going to be reserved for that sweater spin that I mentioned. I have, I think, 5 braids that really go well together, so I don't want to break those up. I do have a couple other small braids that if I have time, I might want to get to, but I kind of like having those in my stash to put together combo spins. That's like definitely my favorite thing to do. So I like to have a little bit of a stash. So I don't really want to spin all of that. But yeah, my main thing is just going to be carding bats. I have processed several fleeces before, and I have been carding up that wool. I also want to play around with like mixing different fibers. I think that could be really interesting. So I'm definitely going to be busy this Tour de Fleece, just not necessarily spinning, but I will be playing with wool for sure. And I always love seeing what other people are working on during Tour de Fleece. Last year, I ended up filming like a weekly vlog through the whole thing, which is funny to look back at because we were so busy that summer. We always have family visiting either right before Tour de Fleece or during the start of Tour de Fleece. So the start of it always feels very like chaotic to me because we're just doing so many different things. Anyway, that is what I have planned, and I'm looking forward to it. And I definitely want to film as much of the fleece processing and the spinning as I can. The last project that I have planned is a sewing project. I really like to sew. I just don't make time for it the way that I do my other hobbies. And I do find in the summer I tend to want to sew a bit more. It's probably just because summer is so damn hot that I don't always want to be working with wool. So I do have a project planned. I actually have several different sewing patterns that I have been looking at and that I want to make, but I only have the fabric for one of these, and I don't think I'm gonna have time to like shop around and buy stuff and make stuff this summer at least. But I just thought I would share kind of the patterns that I'm looking at if you are looking for a little bit of inspiration. But I have this textured linen cotton gingham fabric from Lyrical Fabrics that I bought, I think, a couple of years ago now. I have a lot of it. I think I have 3 yards. And I bought it with the intention of making pants, and then I just never made them. But one very popular pattern that I've been looking at is the Lane Pants by Sydney Graham. The Lane Pants have an elastic waistband, which I don't love as much. I just tend to wear slightly more formal pants, I think, but it is much more beginner friendly, and I'm definitely a beginner sewer or sewist. However, this pattern, I think there's something about the ties at the waistband that elevates this a little bit. I think the pockets too. So I will plan to make the pockets. There's, I think, 2 different versions. But yeah, something about those elements makes these pants look like a little bit more upgraded to me. Not that they're like formal pants, but they look less like pajama pants. So I'm definitely considering those. I would like to make them at some point, even if it's not with this fabric. But the other pattern that I was looking at is the Jill Wrap Skirt by Jessie Lou's Patterns. I really like the mini skirt version, and I think that would be really cute for the summer. So if I end up sewing something soon and I want to, or I still have time to wear it in the summer, it'll probably be the wrap skirt. But if I end up pulling out my sewing machine and working on this kind of later in the summer, summer, I might just go with the pants and have those ready to wear in the fall. Some other patterns that I have been thinking about a lot, one is the Henrietta skirt by Spaghetti Western. That one was very trendy, I think, last year, and I still really like that one. So if I find some fabric that I like for it, I'm definitely thinking about that. And then I also saw somebody on Instagram was wearing that skirt, the Henrietta skirt, with the Andy set top from Swim Style Patterns, and she had matching fabric, so it kind of looked like a set, and I really liked that. So that's another thing that I'm kind of thinking about. I do have a wedding to go to this September, so we'll see if I have time to make something for that. I think also the Ornella top by Spaghetti Western would be a good match for the Henrietta skirt, or even just a top on its own. I was looking at this cotton poplin from Lyrical Fabrics. I really like the wide stripes. I think those are pretty trendy right now. And then I also found this cotton lawn from Lyrical Fabrics, which looks like granny squares, and I just think that's really cute. So those were kind of two of the fabrics I was looking at for these projects. Again, I don't know that I'm actually going to be able to work on them, but that is just kind of like what's in my head right now and what I would like to be working on. So that is everything that I have. Like I said, I'm working on a lot of projects. I have hopes and dreams for so many more things that I want to make. But if you've made any of these patterns or used any of these yarns or just have general thoughts, definitely let me know. I would love to hear any tips you have, or just kind of what your experience was like before I dive in, especially for some of these patterns that I am thinking about but haven't quite made a decision on. And a little bit of a content update from me. Like I mentioned, summer is always just very, very busy. I've just been doing a lot of stuff outside of this little box, and that's not necessarily going to change. So you might see less content from me this summer. I always wish that I could just make all day long and that could be all that I do. But you know, gotta pay the bills, and also there's a lot of grass to touch out there. So been doing that, but I love making videos. I'm always thinking about it, and I'm always trying to make more content. So I have a few vlogs that I'm working on. Knitting just takes a while. Projects just take a while, so those will come out when they come out. Thank you so much for watching, as always, for being here. I really do think that YouTube is like the best social media. It's my personal favorite, so I love being here. Thank you for being here. I hope to see you very soon, and good luck in this heat wave.